Alright, hello guys, this is Trevor Page here from the Java Video Tutorials.net series. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how you can set up your own VPS, your own virtual private server. Now, if you don't know what a VPS is, or a virtual private server, this is what we use to actually create and run our web applications that we create in Java. Okay, so Java is a system that requires you to have essentially your own private server, and essentially it sounds like a confusing term, but all it really is just it's a computer that exists virtually somewhere other than where you are right now. Okay, there are companies who purchase computers, like big, huge servers, and on those big, huge servers, the physical machine, there are many virtual servers that you can create. So essentially, you can have one big computer that has, potentially thousands of little computers inside of it. Okay, and you're essentially going to be using and creating one of those little virtual servers on the bigger server. If it's one way to break it down to be pretty simple. So what I would suggest you do, go to howtoprogramwithjava.com, and I have a little banner for InterServer. These guys are the cheapest and the best that I have found. Okay, I think I've used 6 or 7 different hosting companies, which all have failed me in one shape, one way or another. InterServer is the best that I can find. Okay, so I'm only going to be promoting what I feel is the best, and this is what I use to host my Java video tutorials. Okay, now you can go to howtoprogramwithjava.com and click on there, or I think I even have a link. You can go howtoprogramwithjava.com/InterServer. If I'm not mistaken, that should bring you to, so that brings you to the actual InterServer. Now what that was is it's an affiliate link for me, so if you do sign up, it doesn't cost you anything extra to sign up for this, but I get a little bit of kickback for that, for them saying, thanks for bringing in a new customer. Okay, so it's just an affiliate sale. You don't pay anything extra, but it helps me out, and if you want to go through it, then fantastic, thanks very much. You don't have to go through that link. You can just go directly to interserver.net, completely your choice. Okay, now perhaps in the future, if you're watching this in the future, maybe their website might not look exactly like this, but you pretty much just need to go to create a VPS server. So here it's VPS specials listed here. I just say more info, and that brings me to their sort of outline of what sort of servers you can purchase. So I want a Windows server. So you see here the Windows logo is over here, so it's part of their KVM slices. And if you look, they break down their slices in terms of memory. So really, one slice is all you need if you're going to have a small application that you're going to be running. Maybe you're going to use this to, just to show off to your friends or family, or just use it in terms of a debugging, like a quality assurance, a QA environment. One slice is all you need. Now you see here it says $8, but I actually have a coupon code you can use to get it down very cheap. Okay, so I'm going to use the $8 KVM slice. Just one slice is fine, but if you click, you can increase the number of slices. You can get more memory for obviously more money, but one's fine. I'm going to say buy now, and that essentially brings you to this screen. Now this screen, you can go forward, and so you see it's pre-selected my KVM. Location I'm saying is New Jersey. Fair enough. That's fairly close to where I live. Blah blah blah. The image I'm going to choose Windows. Okay. Now, here is where you have a choice. Now, I prefer Windows 2008, 64-bit edition. It is up to you guys what you choose. If you have less than, less than 8 gigabytes of memory, then the 32-bit's fine. It's completely up to you. Maybe I will choose 32-bit just to stick with the default, just to show you that you can choose either one. You can choose your billing cycle. If you like to, you can pay in advance and save some cash, up to you. And here's where I don't want to use this coupon code, because you see here it says $8 per slice. I have my own coupon code that you can use, Java Video Tutorials. Okay, and that brings it down to a whopping 1 penny. All right, so then you can go ahead and say continue to next step. And here you go, you can go ahead and confirm and pay with your credit card or PayPal or whatever you like. Okay, I'll say pay with credit card, and I believe I've already had it input into the system. Perhaps it will remember my credit card, maybe it won't. And it should hopefully take us to the page. Here we go. So now it's going to start installing your VPS. Okay, so it takes a little while for this whole process to carry out. I think it's about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward through this video so that you don't actually have to sit here and wait through the video while it goes through 15 minutes. So I'll check back when this install progress is done. Okay, so now we are all done and we have our server is up and running, as you can see here. So now the next step is to be able to log into the server with a username and password and start setting it up. So let's do that now. So the first thing that InterServer does that's sort of unique to this platform that I've seen is you need to sort of allow your IP address to be able to give access to be able to log in to remote desktop into this private server. So in order to do this, you need to go to the VNC option. For me right now, that's in the info menu. You go to VNC. And then you sort of get a screenshot of what's going on with your server, which is also fairly unique to InterServer, which is nice. You can see what's going on there. But as you scroll down here, you'll see that there's these steps that you need to carry out. The first step is you need to grant your IP address access to the actual VNC and wait about 2 minutes for that action to complete. So I'm going to go ahead and click there to grant access to my my IP address, and I'm going to say okay, update VNC configuration to allow access to my IP, and then we will wait about 2 minutes for this action to complete. So once again, I will sort of fast forward this video so that the 2 minutes have elapsed and we can pick up from there. Alright, so now that 2 minutes has elapsed, I'm going to go back to, I think, the VNC screen, and then I'm going to say click here to launch the Java client. Okay, so now this is what we're going to use. It's going to be a little Java program that runs that will allow us to see and control our server. Because right now here, this is just a screenshot. We can't actually control the server. So we'll click here to launch the Java client. And what's going to happen is you might need to install a plugin or something. So I'm going to go ahead and say install plugin and start everything off. You'll see it downloads something. This is just for Chrome. To be able to install the Java client to Chrome. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck all this stuff because I don't want it to install any sort of search bars or anything. So what I'll do here is I'll just fast forward through this stuff because you don't really need to see it. All right, so Java is now successfully installed. I'll say close. It's going to redirect me to a different website to try to verify my Java version, but I'm satisfied. I think I know that it's all good to go. So now I will see that the Java client automatically launches, and now we can actually control our server. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to log in for the first time. And here's where you can go ahead and you will have to choose your own password. Okay, so I'll put in a nice long password. I believe those should match. And then there you go. So my password's been changed. So now we are able to, if we want to, we can actually remote desktop into this application now, or this server now. So this is the key. If you want, you can do all your work inside of this sort of VNC, Java VNC window. But I find that that's not as nice as being able to actually remote desktop into your server. So if you're using a Windows machine, you can actually use remote desktop to actually do this. If you are not on a Windows machine, I'm not sure. I don't use Macs a lot or Linux machines, so I don't exactly know if there's an equivalent to remote desktop or not. But I'm just going to show you how you can go about using the regular old Windows remote desktop to actually connect to your server. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this window, the VNC that I have open. And the trick is to know what the IP address is for your server. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the remote desktop, and I'm going to paste in that IP address. So this is the little remote desktop connection. Paste in the IP address and say connect. So now what it's going to do, it's going to ask me for my username and password. So I'm going to use another account to log in because I don't want to use my regular Microsoft account. I'm going to use another account, and I believe the default username is usually administrator, which you'll probably want to change because for security reasons you don't want to have the default username. And the password is just going to be the password that you had set up before in that Java VNC client. So now I'm going to say remember my credentials so I don't have to do that again, and I'm going to say OK. And it's going to ask me to confirm that I'm OK with the certificate, and I'm going to say yes. and then it should go and remote desktop in. So now we have a full screen to deal with, which is nice, which is why I prefer to use it in this manner. And now I can go and set up my server. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to close off all the stuff that it's sort of launched, which is that one screen, and I'm going to start installing, oh, here we go, 2 screens. I'm going to start installing the software that I need to get my Java server up and running. So if you already know how to get a server up and running with respect to installing a database on it, installing like a web server, like a Tomcat server, and all that stuff, then you're good to go from this point on. You can treat this like any other computer. It's just there's going to be a little configuration that you need to do at the very end with respect to your Tomcat server.xml file in order to make it work as expected. So if you would like to, you can skip the whole rest of this video until near the end of the video is where I'll be talking about that server XML file. Okay. So if you do not know how to set up a server and everything, then by all means continue to watch. So the first thing you want to do is start with Windows Update. So I will start the Windows Update, and these are very important things, security updates and everything, as well as perhaps some software that other programs will need to use, like the .NET framework. I know some of the programs I use rely on the .NET framework. So I believe they're installed via the Windows updates, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So we'll go ahead and install all the Windows updates, and then we'll continue installing all the other programs. And if at any point they ask us to install the .NET framework, then there you go, we have our answer. So I'm assuming you guys know how to install Windows updates, you're just seeing me do that right now. It's not too difficult at all. And so go through those processes, reboot and keep rebooting and keep installing until the point where there are no new updates. Okay, and then we'll take it from there. I don't want to waste your time. We'll just fast forward until I am now done installing the Windows updates. Alrighty, so now that we have our Windows updates installed, I'm just going to go ahead and download the first application I'm going to need, and that is Java. So I'm going to search for the Java JRE, the Java Runtime Environment, and I'm especially right now interested in the Runtime Environment 7, version 7. That's the current, up-to-date version that you can get for Java at the time of the recording of this video. More specifically, Runtime 7 Update 45. So I'm going to go ahead and accept the agreement. I'm going to scroll down and find my Windows. Now, Windows x86 means a 32-bit. x64 is 64-bit. Okay. Since I've installed the 32-bit operating system, I'm going to go for the 32-bit edition of the Windows. Of the Java runtime environment. Okay. So I will go and download that one. And while that is downloading, I will save the file. I can now run through my list of other things I'm going to be installing just as an overview. So I'm also going to be installing the Apache web server. Okay, and if need be, I'm also going to be installing the .NET framework. Now I saw some of the files for the .NET framework were installed during the Windows update, but we will see if we will need to update it again. So there you go. Now my runtime environment is downloaded, so I'll click on that to run the file. And we will wait. There we go. So I'll run. And I will say next, install. And let that install on my server. So you've seen me do this already, but this was not for my server that I did this. This was for my actual own personal machine. I had to install Java to get the Java VPN to work. So I now have to install Java again, but on this server, which is a completely different computer. Okay, so I'll say close. That's been successfully installed. It'll probably pop up a yet window. I don't need to verify it. I'm pretty confident that it installed properly. So the next thing on my list of things to install is the web server. So I will go over to look for Tomcat. Okay, so I'll go to the Apache Tomcat website. And at this time, I'm familiar with the Tomcat version 7. I haven't yet gotten myself up to date with Tomcat 8 and all the different features that it has added and everything that's been deprecated. So I'm more comfortable with 7, so that's what I'm going to install today. So I'll click on 7, and I'll go down to find the 32-bit Windows. Now, I'd rather go for the Windows Service Installer because I want to install this as a service that will automatically start every single time this particular VPS starts. Okay, so it's important that I install the Windows Service Installer file. Click on that, save it, and it will hopefully download fairly quickly. And so what this is going to happen is when we install it, it's actually going to be, like I said, a Windows service. So it's not going to be something that we're going to have to manually run. In this fashion, we can have it installed as a service, and therefore, as soon as the computer boots up, it will run the server, which is very important because, let's say, for example, a Windows update automatically installs and the server reboots itself. You want it so that when it reboots itself, it automatically launches the server and therefore deploys your application, and your web application is good to go. Okay, you don't want to hit a scenario where it doesn't start your web server and then therefore your website is down until you realize that it is down. That would be unfortunate. So now I'll run the Apache Tomcat version 7 install file. Go through the wizard to go through and set all that stuff up. I'm just leaving it all set at its defaults. So there are no surprises there. Let that go through. And then once we have that, good, I'll run the actual Tomcat itself. So now this is the service itself starting up. Hopefully that just disappears and we are all good to go. And there we go. So it seems like it's running. If I move my cursor down here, I see that I have Apache Tomcat, and it's got that green little play button there, so we're good to go. It's running properly. Everything is a-okay. So the next thing we need to install is an actual database server. Okay, I use My Sequel. That's what I tend to use because it's free and it's very popular. Lots of support for it. So I'll go to mysequel.com and I will download. If you go to products, you can say more products, and I want to get the Community Edition, which is the free edition. Okay, so I'll download the My Sequel Community Edition, and down here I will say download. So I'll just go to the actual My Sequel installer, MSI file. Which brings me to this file, I believe here. Yeah, this is I prefer the online installer. Okay, so you can download the full version of it, which is the 191 megabyte version, but I just like the online installer. You'll need a connection to the internet after you've downloaded this file for it to work. So I just clicked on the online installer, and you can just scroll down and say no thanks, just start my download to skip the registration process. Or if you want to help them and support them, you can absolutely go and sign up for an account. That's certainly helpful for them, so go for it. Now I'll start the MySQL installer and say run. So there we go. So now it says this application requires the .NET framework. So we need the version 4.0, and it actually gives you the address that you could go to download this particular file. So I'm just going to go there, go.microsoft.com/ looks like, is that an FW link? Question mark, link ID equals 181012. Let's see if that works. Seems like it does. So I will say download the .NET framework, and there's some additional software you can download if you like. I'm just gonna say no thanks and continue for now. I want to just get the .NET framework, so I will save that file and go there and run the setup. Say OK to that, run the setup. And now this is going to go through the paces to actually install the .NET software. So this application is very much like the MySQL application that I was just downloading. It's an online installer, so it actually goes through and downloads the necessary files and then installs them for you. So I'll just skip through the video on this because it's not very exciting stuff, and we will pick up where we left off, which is installing the MySQL server. Okay, so now our .NET installation has been completed. So I'll say finish. And I will go back to running that file that I had downloaded for the MySQL installer, which is right here. We'll let that go and do its thing. Run. And hopefully now we can get by the issue where it said we need to install the .NET framework. All right, so now we can go ahead with our installation of the MySQL product. So I'll go ahead and click on Install MySQL Products. This takes us to, obviously, the license agreement. We can accept that. And then we just need to check the internet. It'll connect and make sure that everything is indeed up to date. Hopefully that will be the case. It is. And then now we can go into the good stuff. So there's a bunch of different options for how to install MySQL. And if you say server only, you'll see that it installs only the MySQL server. This type should be used where you want to deploy a MySQL server but will not be developing MySQL applications. I believe that's probably good enough, but I like to go to custom. Okay, call me crazy. I go to custom and say next. I install the MySQL server. I also could install things like the MySQL Workbench. We can give that a shot and see if that installs correctly. We might need more for the Workbench, but we'll see. Let's try installing that for now. The connectors, I believe we can use the... I believe this is the Java connector. If it's not the Java connector, then we're just installing it, and there's a DLL file sitting around doing nothing, so it's really not a big deal. But I'll install that, and if you like, you can have some documentation to install as well. But since I'm, I know what I'm doing with this stuff. At least I think I do know what I'm doing. I don't install the documentation, so I'll say next, and it'll check requirements. And then it'll go and download all of these things and then install them, okay? So I'll say go ahead and execute that. And hopefully everything will be okay with the installation of the MySQL Workbench, but I guess we'll see in 1 second if that will be the case or not. So it has finished downloading everything, so now it'll go ahead and install. Thankfully, it doesn't take too long to actually go through and install these things. So like I said, this is the MySQL server itself. So this is where you are going to be able to create your databases and be able to store information inside of them and use them obviously to your advantage when you're creating your web applications. The next application listed that it should install is the MySQL Workbench. Now, MySQL Workbench gives you sort of a graphical user interface with respect to being able to connect to databases and interact with them. Okay, so a similar application that I use is called Toad for MySQL. Toad, just like the little thing that hops around. You can use it. I actually sort of prefer it, but it's just another step in installing software. And I believe when you install the Toad for MySQL, you need to fill out you're mandatory, you have to fill out a sign-up sheet. So you need to give your email address, your name, etc., in order to download the program. If you don't want to do that, then I would recommend installing the MySQL Workbench. So you can see there that it wasn't able to install the Workbench. So if that happens with you, you can just show the details. And I believe I remember seeing something along the lines of you had to install another piece of software. So this MySQL Workbench requires the Visual C++ 2010 redistributable whatever package to be installed. So if you like, you can install this. So I guess you're kind of in a tough spot either way. You can either choose to install the Toad for MySQL and fill out a sign-up sheet, or you can install the Visual C++ redistributable package. So I think for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to try to install the Visual C++, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I haven't actually done this before, but I think in order to keep everything sort of neat and tidy in a package, I would like to be able to use all the MySQL products together. So that's, I suppose, what I'll do. I'll fire up the my Firefox here and go ahead and search for this download, and I'm going to go ahead and download it because I believe it's free. I don't see why they would actually try to charge you for this kind of stuff. So I'll go ahead and download that. So here's some additional add-ons that will enhance your user experience. Client profile. I don't think I want any of that stuff, so let's just say no thanks and continue and see how it goes. Save the file. And go ahead and run that file. Run. Okay, accept licensing agreement. Yes, send information about I don't want to send information to Microsoft. So I have no idea how long this is going to take. It looks like it's pretty quick, actually. And there you go. So beautiful. That's nice and quick. So now let's try to go back here to this installation. We can say, let's see, can we go back? No, I guess we can't go back. So for now, it assumes that we're going to move forward, and it wants to configure our SQL Server. So fair enough, let's configure our SQL Server for now. So I'm going to mark this as the configuration type I'll use is a server machine. So there's a choice between dedicated machine and server machine. But if you read here, it says several server applications will be running on this machine. Choose this option for web application servers. So that's essentially what we're going to be running here. This is not a dedicated MySQL machine. The way I have my setup is this server will run both the database server as well as the web application server. Okay, so I'll choose the server machine. I can leave my ports default for now. If you like, for security purposes, you can always change that. And there's some advanced configuration options if you like, but I just keep it simple and say next. You choose a password. I would recommend that you use a different password for your database than you used for your Windows login. I just typed out a random weak password, but I would recommend obviously you also have a strong password. And if you like, you can create MySQL user accounts, but for now, again, I'm just going to keep it simple. This is sort of what I always end up doing, and I'll just say next to install this as a Windows service and everything. So I will say next, and it'll go and configure all of that stuff for us. So if we're lucky, the configuration will complete successfully, and we'll be able to move on to our next step, which will really be to go back and rerun this MySQL installer to now try and install the not the community edition, the Workbench. Okay, and the Workbench is the graphical user interface that we can use to interact with our databases. So there you go, configuration complete, fantastic. We'll say finish, and I'm going to go back and rerun. I'm going to say show all downloads. I'm going to go back and rerun the MySQL installer. Okay, because that's what we were running before, and I'll say run. And I'll close that down. And this is the beauty of the package, or the installer that we actually downloaded, the online installer, is that you can go back and sort of customize it and keep on messing around with it. I kind of like that instead of having it all in one. So there you go. I'll go back to install updates, or not install updates, sorry. Let me say add or modify products. So now I'm going to go applications and click on the Workbench again, because that's what failed to install. So I'll say next. So now it's to be installed. I'll say execute, and hopefully now it will install correctly, and we won't see any errors pertaining to the C++ 2010 package that we needed to install. All right, so there we go. We have successfully installed the Workbench. So I'll say next and finish. And now we are pretty much good to go in terms of having all of the applications that we need to have installed. Okay, if you like, you can. I also usually install like a Notepad++ application. I won't go through that right now because it's a standard application download. I just like using something like Notepad++ personally. So I would install that, and so there you go. It's also running the MySQL Workbench, which is good. So I suppose what we can do now is we can connect to our database and create an actual database, or new database. Okay, so why don't I do that now? I'm gonna have to do that because when I run my the way I've created my my Java project is that it needs a database created in order for it to populate the database with all the appropriate tables, etc., etc. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out how okay, I need to type in a password. I'm going to figure out how to create a database with this application, because I've actually never really used the MySQL Workbench before. As I said, I've always used Toad, but I like to, open up my, my horizons to try new things. So now let's see, we can create a new SQL tab. So what I want to do is create a new database. So it looks like I create a new schema would be the one that I want to do. And for my application I'm going to deploy, it's the Java Video Tutorials application. So I need the Java Video Tutorials database. So let's do that. Say server default, sure, why not, and say apply. And so it's going to create a new schema. And I'll say apply that script. Very good. Okie dokie. So now I would assume that I have a, there you go, Java Video Tutorials database, which probably has no tables in it or anything like that. So that's good. That hopefully has been created properly. So now I can hopefully deploy my application and it will work. So now let's do that. So what I'm going to do is normally I also install something like Dropbox on my server so that I can easily transfer files back and forth. But what I have is I've already done that in the background. I've transferred over a WAR file, WAR. Okay, and that is what is created, and that's what you can use to sort of drop into your Tomcat web apps directory, and it will automatically deploy the application for you. So I'll go to that file now. So this is essentially the home stretch, if you will, on getting your server up and running and getting your application actually launched on the server and having people be able to go and actually access your application on the interwebs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my downloads folder, as that's where my my actual file was downloaded, my WAR file. Let me see where I would assume it's in users, administrator, downloads. Yes, so you see I have a Java Video Tutorials.war file. Okay, and I'm actually going to, let me move this over here and make this a little bit larger, like so. Now I'm going to copy this into a very specific folder, okay? Remember, at the beginning here, we installed Apache Tomcat server. So if you go to Program Files, by default it installs in Program Files, Apache Software, Tomcat. Okay, if you chose a different location, then you're going to have to remember where you chose to install it and navigate to that location. Now I'm going to go within Tomcat 7, I'm going to go to Web Apps folder, okay, very specifically in this folder. And I'm going to copy paste in my WAR file, okay? And if my server is running, which I believe it is, it will see that the Java Video Tutorials.war file was placed into this directory, and it will automatically, it does an explode on it, so it actually goes and unpacks it and installs it into its own folder. So now if I double click on this, all my files that are part of my Java Video Tutorials application have been installed essentially within the Tomcat directory. Okay, so now essentially what we could do is we could go to a web browser and we could try to access this application locally. Okay, right now we won't be able to access it from outside of the server, but I just want to check and make sure that it actually deployed correctly and it's good to go. There's probably, there could definitely still be errors in the deploying process that need to be addressed. And if there are, then I would go to the logs folder, which is right here. So within the Tomcat 7 directory, there will be a logs directory. And this is where you can find out if there is indeed any issues happening. Generally, it's in one of these two files, the Tomcat 7 standard out files. But for now, let me go and just go to localhost and see if our application is running properly. So now by default, I believe the Tomcat server runs to localhost port 8080. Okay, so I can go to that port, localhost 8080, and see and confirm that we can connect to the Apache server, which it looks like we can. Now let's go to /Java Video Tutorials to see if our application has successfully launched. And again, this could be a toss-up as to whether or not it worked. It looks like it worked. It's just trying to load it. And there you go. So my application has loaded, okay, and it's properly deployed locally, but we can't access this server yet. Okay, and I'll show you. If I open up a browser on my computer and try to connect to my server, I could type in the IP address, like 66.23.234.211, and hit enter and try to access the actual server itself. Or rather, well, you'll see that this doesn't work. Or you could try to access it through port 8080, and you'll see that that also does not work. So the reason for that is really two things. One is a server.xml file that we need to configure, and the other is perhaps a Windows firewall security issue that we need to sort of tweak, okay? So let me close that browser down on my computer, and let me go back to the server here. So on the server, we want to go to the actual Apache Tomcat installation, and we want to go to the configuration folder. Okay, and inside of the configuration folder, we have a server.xml file which we want to edit. Okay, now this is normally where I would suggest downloading something like Notepad++ because it's a little bit nicer to peruse these kinds of files. They add some color coding, etc., etc. But for now, I know exactly what it is I want to modify, so I'm just going to search for 8080. Okay, I want to search for the 8080 port. So now you'll find it in the connector port. Here, I believe this one is not commented out. It's so hard to tell because it's not color coded, but I believe this is what I want to edit. So I don't want the Tomcat to be loading port 8080. I want it to load to port 80, which means that when someone connects from the outside coming in on port 80, because that's what a default HTTP request comes through, that will be intercepted by my Tomcat server. Okay. The next thing I want to do is scroll down and check out the host tag. Okay, so here I want to define that my my Java video tutorials should be deployed to, or rather, assign the alias of just the root. Okay, so before I change this setting, I'll show you exactly how it's working right now and why you'd want to change that. Okay, so I guess that'll put some context behind it. So for now, okay, good. We've switched it to port 80, which is great. So anytime we make a change to the server.xml file, we should go down here and restart our Apache server. So I'll click on this, and hopefully it'll bring up a little menu. So I can say stop service. So it'll stop my Tomcat server. And when we do this, obviously anyone who's currently logged into your server or logged into your application, if they're using it, they're going to be kicked off. So be careful with that. Make sure that you know people are not doing anything important on your server when you kick them off. And then go back and start the service again. So now this will be the restart that we need to sort of take our changes to the server XML file and put them into practice. And now if I go back to my browser on my local computer, so now I can go here and try to refresh this page. So now what should happen is it should be sending a request to port 80. And if all was well, the Apache Tomcat server would intercept that request on port 80 and sort of redirect it to your application. Okay, but this is still not working. So there's one last step that we need to look at in order to make this work, and that is to add a little security exception, security rule for the Windows firewall. Okay, so I'm going to go to Start, and I'm going to type in firewall to search for the Windows firewall. Obviously, if you're not on a Windows server, you don't need to worry about this step. So I just clicked on Windows Firewall, and I am going to say allow a program through Windows Firewall, I think is the setting I want to actually enact. Now this is a bit different than what I'm used to, but that's perhaps because I was on a different version of Windows. I'm going to say add a port. I'm going to call it HTTP and say port 80 at TCP protocol. Okay, HTTP port 80 TCP protocol, and say OK. And say OK. And so now we've sort of we've added an exception to our firewall. So I believe this should now work. Again, I'm not used to that interface, but we'll see. Let me refresh and see. So now there you go. So now the request has come in through port 80, and we have hit the actual web server. So now this is great. Now we can just type in Java video tutorials. And so this is from my computer now. This is not from the server inside the server. This is from outside on the internet. Okay, we're able to get through and access this application. So that is fantastic. That is great. The only last step is this right here. Well, there's two things. One, obviously you don't want to have to type in a number. That's a whole different story. Okay, that is something where you have to have an actual domain name that points to this server now. Okay, that is a whole nother can of worms. Perhaps I'll make a video on how to set that up because it's a little bit confusing. That deals with changing the DNS zone file or something like that. So I won't cover that now. But what I will talk about is this. So picture us in a scenario where we're not typing in an actual number. We're typing in a domain name. Okay, like javavideotutorials.net. Okay, but now imagine that this is javavideotutorials.net right here with this number. We'd also have to type in /javavideotutorials, which is kind of annoying. Okay, that hurts me a little bit inside. So I don't want to have to type in / Java Video Tutorials to access this application. So what do I do? Well, that's another tweak that you need to make to the server file, the server.xml file. We need to tweak down in the host section, okay, the host. So where it says localhost here, this is where we need to add a new little piece of information, okay? So what we need to add in here is something called the context tag, and I have it stored in my clipboard. So what we do here is I'm assigning a context tag. I'm creating a doc base, okay, a document base. And what this is it's pointing to the actual Java Video Tutorials folder, okay, in relation to the document base. Okay, so this is how I would do it if you had installed stuff inside of the web apps folder. So the application base is web apps folder. Okay, and then I'm saying from that folder, look at the Java Video Tutorials path. So if you look at what we have, if the app base folder is web apps, okay, this is what we had defined in our server XML file, then web apps / Java Video Tutorials will take us here, which is where we want it to go. Okay, so we're pointing it to the Java Video Tutorials directory, and we're saying the path to this is blank. So essentially what we're saying is as soon as someone types in the server's URL, which is the IP address of the server, or types in a domain name that points to that IP address, we will no longer want to show the web application server itself, because remember when we just went to the IP address, it showed us the Apache web server stuff, and then we had to type in / Java Video Tutorials. Now what we want to do is, let's go back to my computer, my computer that I'm talking on right now, and I want to be able to take this away and type in just the server address, or obviously the domain name that points to that server address, and have it load the Java Video Tutorials application. So I'll save this, and I'm going to go and restart my server again. So I'll stop the service, and I'll go and start the service again. Now what this is going to do is, hopefully if all goes well, if there are no problems with your configuration, you'll see that the play button stays as a play button. If there is an error with the starting of the server, it'll show up as a red stop button, and then I will advise you to go back to your log file, which is in the Tomcat directory, and go to logs, okay, and look at either the standard out file, std out, or the standard error file. Okay, and that might be where some problems are showing themselves, and you should take a look and see if you can debug the problem. But for now, my server has started, and I can go back to my machine here, so not on my server, but on my machine, and I'm just going to type in this address. And if all goes well, there we go. So now I can hit refresh, and it's now live on the internet. I'm now able to access my application, and I should be able to use my application as, you know, a regular old user. And you could now forward this address to any one of your friends, your family, whoever, and they'd be able to now access your web application that you have created yourself, and it will hopefully be properly hooked up to the database server that you just installed, and everything shall be a-okay. Isn't that neat? I think that's cool. No one ever taught this to me, so I apologize if this video was very long and monotonous, but this didn't exist for me. I couldn't find all this information in one place that would help me to put all this together, to get to this point where I could actually deploy this application and have anybody on the internet go and access it. So hopefully you've gotten a lot of value out of this tutorial, and if you really, like I said, if you really want to help me out and sort of give back, I would encourage you to follow through with all these tutorials. Go to howtoprogramajava.com/interserver. Okay, if you go there, then you can sign up for that server, and then it's an affiliate link for me, so I'll get a little bit of a kickback for getting you and signing you up as a customer, and I will be greatly appreciative of that favor from you. Okay, so as always, I will say that this has always been a pleasure. I'm glad I can help you out. I wish you all the very best and happy learning. All right, take care and bye for now.